Hello, everybody. This is Shane Douglas Keene, and I am joined tonight by my partner in crime, Rich Duncan, and we are Ink Heist. Our guests tonight are Candace Nola and Brennan LaFaro. These are two favorite authors of ours on the Ink Heist podcast, but they're also two favorite people of ours on the Ink Heist podcast. Ink Heist considers these two to be two of our best friends. So we're always happy to talk to you guys. Let's start with Brennan. We'll get to you because you have some stuff to talk about tonight too. I mean, we're going to focus on Candace's stuff, but you have some stuff I've been following online, and I want to hear about that too. So, but first, Candace, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us what you've been up to and what these new books you have out are all about. And then we'll just destroy you.
Candace Nola, creator of Uncomfortably Dark, author, editor, publisher, reviewer. And what have I been up to? Writing a lot. I have 3 or 4 new releases out over the last couple of months. The new anthology is about to drop at the end of this month. Going to Author Con at the end of this month. So I've been preparing for that. And we just signed 11 new authors to Uncomfortably Dark, I think, for 2025 and 2026. So we just got through doing all the preliminary stuff with all of them and making sure we're off to the races. And I don't think I've slept in about 9.5 months. So here we are.
Not much then. Not too busy.
Yeah. Not at all.
Really glad you're taking time for yourself.
Always.
Yeah, it's good to know you're getting some rest, Candace.
Yeah. Minutes. Many minutes.
As a veteran parent, though, you get used to not sleeping after a while,
Yeah, you do. And I have a 15-year-old here at home still, so I'm still very much doing the mom thing, and I have a day job on top of all my other stuff. So yeah, I sleep about 27 minutes a night. It's enough. Yeah. Perfect.
And during the rest of your free time, you spend it thinking up shit like nubs.
Yeah. I have a whole list of those. So I hope you're ready, Shane.
I do. I am. But nubs. Well, I'm not going to say a whole bunch about that book because it's really, really easy to spoil this one. But it's a stupid, ridiculously fun book. Kitty, the main character, is a sick puppy. And yeah, that one took me by surprise, and I'll tell you why. It was not because I didn't expect this kind of madness from you, because I read The Unicorn Killer. I know exactly what I'm getting into with you. But it started out so very pleasant, and so
all things considered, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, okay, this is pretty tame. I could deal, and then a couple more flips of the page on the Kindle, and it's like, holy shit. Like, and so Candace came into the room at that point in time.
I answered the chat.
Yeah.
You said your kids inspired it. I was just
Yeah, my oldest. So a lot of my short stories actually come from my children. The Unicorn Killer came from the younger of the 2 girls, and that was her idea. She's like, what if you did this? And then, a couple weeks after that, we had Frank. And my oldest is the main. She's the main person in Nubs. It's actually her. She is a therapist. She enjoys a good snack plate just about every single day. That is her name. That's her nickname. And she works from home a lot of the time. She's probably one of the nicest, most well-rounded individuals you'd ever want to meet. And yeah, that was her idea because she has a little bit of a weird thought process when it comes to nubs, and she likes them a whole lot. And it was like a running joke for a while, and then it just sort of devolved into this, what if you did this and what if the person did that? And she's not as unhinged as the character in the story, not by any means, but our sense of humor is a little unhinged, so it just kept getting darker and darker. And she's like, yeah, you should write that. So I did. Yeah.
That's awesome. And just real quick, I just wanted to ask you, like, did she know she was going to be the basis for that from the beginning? And how did she think that was cool? Because like I know Shane and I think maybe even Brennan, we were characters in Alan Baxter's The Roo.
Yep.
And for me, that's still like one of the coolest things. So I was wondering how your daughter felt about like being a main character.
My daughter loves it. She is a whole grown ass adult, and she's with me pretty much at all the conventions and stuff like that. So if you've met me, chances are you've met her. And she has actually been the inspiration for Nubs and Zippers. And in the Baker's Dozen anthology, she's a character in my short story in there as well. And all the character names are all different variations of her nicknames that we've all used for her throughout the years. So yeah, just about every other one of my short stories, it's her. It's her idea. It's her in the book. And she's just like, what are you doing next, Mom? And we just talk about this whole little line. And next thing you know, I have a new story. So yeah.
That's awesome.
I'd like to take a moment to appreciate, like, if you write, anybody who writes, at some point, somebody is going to come up to you, whether it's a kid or a coworker or, a distant relative, and be like, hey, I've got this idea for a story you can write. And you humor them, but most people are going to think like, that's great, but I've got, more ideas than time to write. But you are cranking them out so quickly that you can be the person who, you know what, that is an idea, and I am going to write, an entire novella, in when I should be sleeping, and put it out to disturb the world.
I have a whole list of ideas, and I think the concept for this one actually happened probably early last year when it got put on the list, and then it kind of comes up every now and again, and I work on it like mentally in the background for a while, and then when I finally have time to sit down and write the next one off the list, I just sit down and I write it, because by that time it's been in the works for so long that it's already sort of like written. So I just sit down and I type the words out. It's not necessarily a writing process for me at that point. It's just putting the words onto the page. So yeah, it's fun though.
I would like to be able to write that way. My approach is more agonize with nothing but my seed idea, and then finally just start banging my head at it trying to write it. And it's a slower process by far.
You should try typing with your fingers instead of your head. I find that helps me.
Usually works a little bit faster. Fingers on keys.
Yeah. Well, depending on how many fingers you have, what if they're all nubs?
Oh no.
Well, don't invite my daughter over to start with. One of them will be in the mouth, and then you can type one-handed, I guess.
That was a perfect setup for the nubs. What?
I figured just the nose, it sticks out far enough that I can hit the keys accurately without getting anything else involved.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was just, and two, you were saying like it was your daughter's idea. Like I just thought that was interesting because I had that thing too. And like you were saying, Brennan, like it's a little bit different than someone telling you they have an idea, but I find like kids, I don't know if it's because they don't have a filter, and I know your daughter's a little bit older, but like I don't know, like I have an 8-year-old, and I don't know if it's because like the filter's a little bit like dampened, but sometimes they'll say these things that are just totally unique, and you just can't help but like write it down. So
Yeah.
like it's not them telling you it not idea, but like sometimes they have those like pure ideas, and you're like, that would make like an interesting story.
Yeah.
I sorry,
my-
Candace, go ahead.
My kids are just about as weird as me, so we're all a little bit like unhinged, and they are at the point now where they think what I do is kind of cool and kind of neat, even though my 15-year-old tries to play it off like I'm not as cool as I think I am. But he's like, "Hey, mom, what about this idea?" And then he'll like walk in the room and be like, "So what if you did this?" He'll give me an idea and then he'll walk out. So it's nice that they're all in on the act, I think. And you might be surprised to find out that so is my mom. So that's a good sign. Yeah, she almost won the gross out contest at AuthorCon last year, which was hilarious. And she fully intends on entering again this year. So we have her story in the works. And yeah, my whole family is a little bit different.
I hope
That's
she
so
takes
cool.
it. I hope she takes it. No, I was just saying it made me think of my younger guy is 11 now, and I don't even know how old he was when he did this, probably 8, maybe 9. He just drew this picture that I actually have here because I plan on doing something with it at some point. I don't know how well you can see this, but he drew calls it Mr. Mystery. It is a mind devourer. I don't know what that means, but this is the creepiest freaking thing I've ever seen. And
Okay.
straight from the imagination of an 8-year-old. Like if I can't turn that into a story, there's no hope for me.
Sure you can. There's a lot you can do with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had one too. It took me a little bit, but it was something I originally was going to submit to Horror Tree, but it was just like it wasn't like developed enough with like the word count. But then there was a charity anthology. And I wrote something because like it's just one sentence that inspired it, but like you were saying, Brennan, too, like that was the creepiest picture. It was just one line, like it was really windy outside, like during the winter or something. So like when the wind's whipping and kind of hear it through your house.
Yeah.
My daughter described it as the walls were screaming. And that was the most terrifying thing I had heard her say up to that point.
Yeah.
But it was just perfect.
Yeah, it's a great line.
It's accurate too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was creeped out. I'm not gonna lie.
Candace, I want to hear a little bit about because you kind of went, I guess I would call it deep dive on the psyche, kind of like that almost internal idea of like, this is what I'm interested in and this is where it goes back to. So what was the process like discovering Kitty's inner thoughts?
Just having a conversation with my daughter.
No.
Not
to
gonna
throw
lie.
under the bus.
This whole story was a conversation with my daughter, and she was like, "But what if?" And it's not like she's serious about, "Oh, I would ever do this," or "I would seriously do this," but it's more about what does it feel like to be on the other side of that, and when you enter in the mysterious limb pain, the phantom limb pain when it's not there, but you know how anyone that has gone through that always talks about they feel like it's still there and they still feel that pain, or they still feel like that part of them is still attached. And we were just having this conversation one day, and she's like, I wonder if you were to stab the area where their hand used to be or where their foot used to be, would it hurt them? Like, would they feel that? Would the phantom limb feel that action? Would it, she's like, what does that feel like mentally on the other side when you're experiencing that phantom pain and it's in your head, like it's not there, you know that you're missing that part. But she's like, but what if they're going somewhere, they are walking somewhere and they stub the foot that they no longer have, like they stubbed their toe? Does that still happen? Do you still feel that sensation of, oh no, but there's nothing there? And it just kind of devolved into this whole but what if thing. So I took that and sort of so when she was younger, a lot younger than she is now, maybe around 11 or 12, she had this little weird quirk, I'm going to call it, where she would come up to you and during a hug or something, or we would be laying on the couch watching the movie or whatever, she would like gnaw on your arm, like just her little teeth, just, not hard, but it would just be like gnawing. But she would always be like, nom, nom, nom. Like you would hear the sound. So that ended up in the book because she was like, I would just want to take a nub and just gnaw on it. So I put that in there. So that's where the nom thing came from.
That was arguably one of the more unsettling parts, which is it's almost odd to say,
truly was.
Like, in quotes, nom, nom, nom.
Because now she always she was gnawing on you, and we'd be like, what are you doing? And she was nom, nom. So that made it into the book. But it was just a whole lot of, but what if, and what would it feel like? And then if you were on that end, would you feel that? And what if a person did that to themselves? Like now you're in this whole other like mental state of, oh, okay, so not only am I missing the limb, but what if I put the missing part in my mouth that I'm gnawing on it? Am I going to feel it, or am I going to feel it here? Or like, does the cut off part still feel pain? Like, would it be so desensitized? This is a whole conversation of just like the what if and the whole intrusive thought thing that we all have, but obviously we shouldn't act on. No different than if you're standing at a funeral and you start to laugh because a thought just pops in your head that you should not be having right then and there, but lo and behold, you do. And it was just like this whole range of what if we take all these intrusive thoughts and we sort of become obsessed with this one concept, and then what happens if we act on it? So, and then if you caught the very end of the book where she's on the river walk, you find out there's a lot more to her nightly walks than is portrayed. So you catch that as well. So then it like the whole thing is a very unsettling experience, I think, because she seems like this happy-go-lucky, well-adjusted individual. And then you find out that, maybe she's been acting on these thoughts a little bit longer than we think. So, yeah.
But and it was interesting to me because it was like when I read that scene, which was the first scene in the book to make me momentarily go, just my mind was going, how is she going to reconcile what she's doing with who she is? Because she was such a friendly person, so kind to everybody and wanting to help people out and do good for others. And it's like, how does she do that and not just totally lose her shit, And you handled that very well too, the way you managed to keep that, it gave her a methodology for shoving that down a bit.
Yeah, it was like a slow descent into madness that you just don't see coming until you're there. It's like, oh, all right.
Now let me ask you and Brennan this, Rich. Do you find after you've read one of Candace's shorter works like Nubs or The Unicorn Killer, etc., that do you feel like you've read a much bigger book by the end of it, content-wise sometimes?
Yeah. I'll if you don't mind, I'll go first. I feel like yes, because that's one thing I wanted to mention with Nubs. And it ties into what Shane's saying, because it is like a shorter work, but the way it's kind of structured, it felt like a bigger work to me only because there's so many things going on. And I'll be honest, I'm not too familiar with the world of like extreme horror fiction. So maybe I'm like off base, but I feel like what I was just curious your thoughts on, because this is like an extreme horror story, because of like the content, but it was also like mixed with like a softness to it, or like a kindness, like Shane said, even if it was only surface level because of what Kitty had done. I was just curious on your thoughts with it, because like even though it's like extreme and stuff, you balance it with like a more human side, a little bit of humor. So like I was just curious, like with extreme horror, like that kind of approach versus I'm sure there's a lot of people who just go for like the surface level. This is the grossest thing I can think of, sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's like a more rambling question, but I guess it was more your thoughts on what you feel makes like a good extreme horror story.
That would depend on the reader and what you like. I know what I think makes one for how I like to write. I do put a lot more of the humanity side into my extreme stuff because I like to give you a little of what that person is really like, because none of us are just a one-dimensional human. Not all of us are inherently evil, and not all of us are inherently good or kind all the time. Not all of us are healthy and well-adjusted all the time. We all have those little things that kind of make us tick, and those little quirks. And I feel like I want you to know why this person is the way they are and what sort of drives them to do the things that they do. And most of my short stories, my extreme ones, they all pretty much read the same way. You're going to have that little bit of this is the human side of the evil person in the story. So even though they're doing these vile things by the end, you still feel like you can relate to them at some point. And if nothing else, you can sort of understand how they went from sort of point A to point B. And I think that's what I like the most about mine is it's not so much just straight on hardcore gore and grossness and violence and just kill, 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 kill. It's, but why though? Like, why are they doing this? Why is this person like, they had to go from A to B somehow. Something took them there. Like something snapped or someone broke them at some point, but what was it? And I think with me, I like to always give you that little bit of, but here's their backstory. Like, this is what makes them human. Like, this is what takes them from just being a one-dimensional evil character in the book to, but this is what you feel for them. Like, even in the Unicorn Killer, Frank, he was lonely. He was just a lonely average guy who just felt like he had completely failed at everything in life. He just had done nothing of note, no accomplishments, no achievements. He was just a basic guy in a basic job in a basic life. And all Frank wanted, he wanted his moment. He wanted one moment of just being seen. And at the end of the story, that's really all the story was about. Frank wanted to be seen, like all of us. He wanted that moment where people were looking at him and finally just paying attention. And Frank went out in a blaze of glory at the end of the book. He had his thing, you know?
Sorry, I was going to say he definitely found his happy place, didn't he?
He did. You know, and yeah, Frank was a messed up guy, but everybody that has read that has come back with, but I felt bad for him too, because I can make them feel something for everyone in the story, including the villain, including the person who's doing the things wrong. Like there's another story that is centered around my oldest daughter, Zippers. Again, her idea, the whole story was her idea. She's the main character. It's her entire first name in the book. But she's this completely just unhinged serial killer person who's going around picking out people that appeal to her for a certain reason. But at the end of the story, you end up feeling sorry for her and you end up understanding why she is this way, even though the whole time she's doing these graphic, vile, evil things. And you're like, what is happening? But there's a reason. And by the time you get to the end of the book, you're just like, oh my God. Not only did you get the hardcore horror and the extreme and the grossness and that cringe and just, what am I reading? But you also get that heartfelt, emotional, like, oh, but this is what made her this way. And then I think when you have that, especially an extreme horror story, I think it just hits you a little bit different. It gives you more of that emotional reaction along with the gross and the action and the extreme and gore, but it leaves you with a different type of emotion at the end of it.
I honestly, and I haven't forgotten that you haven't answered yet, Brennan. But, my mind has definitions of extreme horror and of splatterpunk, and I think what you do that I've read so far falls more into splatterpunk territory than extreme horror territory. For the same reason that Jack Ketchum's did. Really, that same thing. You bring in that humanity. It's about the story, not the splatter. The splatter just happens in the story. I mean, I know that you want it to be extreme, and it is extreme. But I think of it more as extreme splatter punk than straight over into extreme horror, like J.F. Gonzalez Survivor or something. So, but I mean, that's just personal thought. I don't even know why I brought it in there. Just the fine line between
the two.
It's a good one though, man, because I was actually going to say something along the same lines. I mean, I feel like at the moment there's such this blur between extreme horror and splatterpunk. There are so many readers who will say I like splatterpunk, and what they're really reading really is more fits neater into the extreme horror genre. And obviously the whole splatterpunk movement with Skip and Spectre and Scow and all those guys, like it was about the humanity, because it was focusing on the outsider. And in a story like this, you have Kitty, who to the average person might not seem like an outsider, but she is. So focusing on that humanity aspect and what makes her different, like, absolutely kind of pushes this, I think, more towards splatterpunk than extreme horror. And I also think that ties in with the original question, was does a story of this that written in this length almost feel bigger than its actual word count, than its size. And something that jumps out to me is the whole routine of that bus ride and how she knows Jackson, the bus driver. And that even though we're at this certain length and we only see X number of bus rides, the implication that this is happening on the regular, we're not just looking at a snapshot, we're looking at this person's life, even though we only get glimpses of certain days, all the other days are there by implication, giving it kind of that larger feel of we're getting a life, not just a moment, which kind of gears itself more towards a novel anyway, or something longer. So yeah, I think that's a way to do it, is to build up the person so that even if you're just looking at a single scene, you're learning what came before and what comes in the in between, which gives it this kind of larger scope.
Yeah.
I agree with Brennan, and I think we might even have talked about this like the first time that we had you guys on, but like Kathy Koja's, when we had her on, about like readers bringing their own experiences to a story, and like Brennan said with like the bus rides, that was like one of my favorite parts, because it's almost like you said, a lot of the story was like, why is this person doing that? And I don't know if this was like intentional or not, but I picked up on the whys of like that bus ride that Brennan was talking about. That's a much more like innocent thing where you kind of see Kitty's like obsession, but it's more like about being like innocent and like actually curious, and she relates to him on a very human level. And then without spoiling it, you kind of like compare that like naive and like very personal interaction between her and the bus driver versus like the people on the river walk, which it's kind of funny because at least the way that I took it, she had like an equal kind of lifetime, like Brennan said, with the bus driver as she did with the people that live on the river walk.
Right.
But like the decision of keeping one like very innocent versus what happens on the river walk, for lack of a better term, being very obscure about it.
All right. I also liked how the men on the Riverwalk that ultimately become her focus.
Yep, that's a good way. Yep.
I didn't want them to read as, oh, these are just poor innocents. I do that a lot in a lot of what I write as well, because not all victims are just innocent victims. Not all of my evil people in the book are truly just inherently evil for the sake of being evil. She chose her focus based on things that she had learned about them. There was a rhyme and a reason as to why these two men were on her radar. And through her conversations with them, you understand why they became a focus point and why she allowed the intrusive thoughts to sort of take over when it applied to these particular individuals. And I think that also gives a lot of what I write, like another layer of the whole humanity and their lived experience, because not everything is just one dimensional. She doesn't just go out and run amok on the Riverwalk with no purpose. There's a selection process in mind, and there's a reason as to why she's choosing the way she chooses at that point in time. So I was kind of proud of that part too, because not everyone that dies is always just an innocent bystander. There you go. Flip it. Sometimes they are, but I think a lot of what we hear on the news is what the innocent victim was really like. And sometimes you find out that, hey, maybe they weren't so innocent. Sure, unfortunate that they got caught up in this situation, but maybe they weren't so innocent, right? In real life. So I kind of like to illustrate that as well, because not every victim is innocent. You know?
Yeah, I know exactly. Oh, sorry, Shane.
No, go ahead, Rich.
I was just gonna say I know exactly what you mean, because like I feel like a lot of times with like stories, not always, but sometimes they kind of take a trajectory of like everything is very clear cut, like this person's good, this person's bad. Whereas like what you're describing, real life, it's a lot more gray. And that's why
Yeah.
not necessarily like true crime, and I know there's like a whole case that can be made about how people handle that, but like just kind of sort of in that vein of true crime, but like mystery shows or things like that. It's like you'll hear something where it was portrayed in the media, like you said, kind of all a certain way, and that's why these kind of series are so popular, is because you're like, wow, I didn't know about this or that in that
Right.
person's life.
Right. Yeah.
Now, if you're asking me to remember what I was about to say, Rich, you're fucked.
Sorry.
It's in the Discord, man.
I want to segue though, and because I'll forget, because ADHD and I'm a moron and I smoke a lot of weed. But tell us your news, Brennan.
Yes. Huge news.
Yeah, very excited to share it. So I just signed a contract with Nefarious Bat Press, which is run by T.C. Parker and Shauna McElhaney, and they are going to be putting out what I consider my debut novel. I mean, technically, I've written things that are in that kind of 50,000 Stoker novel range, but this is like a true 90,000 word. And at a journey, it's a lot of agents and had a lot of rejections and non-responses and still believed in the thing. I think it's a really good book, and it was an arduous process to find it a publisher, but I'm going to tell you, I found the right one. The enthusiasm from TC and from Shauna, just right off the bat, reading the book and emailing me at this point and that point, and really getting my hopes up during this open call. And then, day or two later, basically saying like, we love this and we need it. And running all of their plans by me for it. Like I said, this is the place for it. And it's going to be out next year, sometime around early 2026. We haven't nailed down a date yet, but it is in the hands of some early readers. We're going to do a few edits on it. We're going to do some cover work, and we'll probably have arcs out second half of 2025. But I am jazzed to see it hit readers.
I'm jazzed to be one. So, new Brennan LaFaro is always something to rejoice about. Also, I wrote a name here earlier in my notepad for, because I take notes while we're talking, because I forget things that happened 30 seconds ago. And it was Nola LaFaro. And now I think that she's going to be a character in this story that Rich and I are working on. Just FYI.
You got to make sure that you don't Mike Clark us and make us this awful villain or something like that.
Yeah.
Try not for the villain part of it, but I just want to say about your announcement for the Denzians, Brennan. I noticed, and because this is something I know both of you can kind of touch on, is like indie authors. I noticed, Brennan, we follow each other on most social media, and I saw you like making kind of like your posts like leading up to announcing the Denzians.
Mhm.
I was just curious, both you and Candace, whoever wants to go first, like specifically for you, Brennan, like how you came up with this kind of rollout for your book, but then for both of you, kind of like, because you both are great at like promotion, just kind of how you handle that as like an indie author.
Hmm. What an ugly question, Rich. I man, it's I won't speak for Candace, but for it's hard because social media is such a goddamn mess right now.
Yeah.
I haven't deleted my Twitter yet, but I don't use it nearly as much as I used to because it's a dead zone.
Yeah.
And like for all of us that kind of built up that platform in 2020 on, uh you go over to Blue Sky and it's just like, oh my God, like, do I really have the energy to start from scratch? And for me,
Mhm.
it's like, no, I don't. Um, and so it's there's a lot of scatter shooting and just trying to put it wherever you can and see, where you get the most traction. For me right now, it's Facebook. Um, and trying to look at the other platforms and say, okay, well, how can I engage a little bit more on Blue Sky and build up that following and get more than like 5 likes on a post? But it really, more than ever before, like even in those early days of trying to build up my platform, it was like, okay, I don't have much, but if I do this, it seems to help. If I interact here, it seems to help. And now it's playing darts in the dark.
Mhm.
So yeah, man, I don't have a good answer for you. I know I had fun putting out those little teasers, going through the book and trying to find, one of them was I did this very Stephen King thing, and one of the epigraphs in the book is a quote from a character in the book, which I'm sure other people have done that, but King is
Mhm.
almost kind of that level of arrogant, like I'm going to quote myself in the beginning of the book. And I always respected that. So one of those was that epigraph. Another one, when I was writing the initial draft of the book, I I pulled a lot of inspiration from a band called Maylene and the Sons of Disaster, and named characters after them, named the damn town after them, and so that was one of the teases too. But it just trying to like put up something. I thought of Clay McLeod Chapman uh, putting out a tweet, every couple of days that just said, wake up,
Yeah.
open your eyes," and everybody being like, what the hell is this even about? And then kind of leading on up to all to his announcement. And I don't think I quite got the fanfare of Clay. I mean, who could? I don't have the energy to run around screaming like that, but it, so, trying to capture that like intrigue, like that, instead of just, hey, I have a book, you can
Mhm.
purchase this book, trying to do something that captures attention. And I truly hope that Candace has a better answer for online marketing than I do,
Let
because
me
if
touch,
not, we're all fucked.
I do not.
let me touch on
It's
that real quick.
it's a crapshoot.
Mhm.
Um, Embarrassingly enough, I don't promote my own stuff as much as I should, nowhere nearly as often as I should anymore, because now I focus so much on the platform and the publishing house for my authors. So I kind of rely on the fan base I already have for my solo work. And when I put out a new book, I promote it for like a week or two, whatever. I put up some quotes and the graphics and the pre-orders. And I have a street team. I have 2 street teams actually, and I have my full review team for the publishing house as well. So I rely really heavily on my street teams a lot, because I send my stuff out to them first, and they read it and review it and stuff. So when it drops, they all go online and they post the cover and their reviews and one or two little sentences about it. And that really helped my stuff a lot, because I focus so much of my time on the publishing house and the authors and everything we're doing with that, that I have this whole system in place for what needs promoted every day and where I have to go and post everything. And we are on Blue Sky, and we're on Facebook, and we're on Instagram, and we're on TikTok. And if you combine all of that, I have probably 20,000 followers between all of those platforms. And it's a lot of work, and it's a time-consuming process. But I put everything into the publishing house rather than my own stuff now. So thanks to everyone who helps me, because at this stage right now, I could not do both my own and the publishing house without the help that I have now. So, and they all know all the time, like how grateful I am. And I thank them all the time. And because they do help my stuff stay in the spotlight a little bit longer than what I would ever be able to do on my own, on top of everything else. So that helps me a lot. The same thing with the publishing house as well. Like, we have a whole street team that handles all of those smaller things, and they take the time to post it here once I make the original post, so I can kind of move on to what's next. And Christina Pfeiffer, who is my VP for the publishing house, she spends a lot of time helping me make the graphics and all the little details that go into that, because I simply do not have the time. I do the posting, I do the articles, I make sure the reviews get shared, I do everything else, but she saves me a ton of time just by making those little things. And she's like, here you go. You know, we get the quotes out and we post them. And yeah, I rely on help, a lot of help, because right now it is a mess. It's just, you got to throw things at the wall and hope something sticks right now. And you never really know like where it's going to stick. But, you know, and the other thing is, and I hate saying this all the time because I do say it all the time, consistency. You have to be consistent. You have to post on every platform you have. You have to put something out every couple of days or once a week at least. You have to share and share and share and post. You have to be consistent about whatever it is you're trying to share, because if you're not, people don't depend on you. They don't rely on what you're offering them. And with me, it's not just about I'm offering you my story. I'm offering you a new release by one of my authors. I'm offering a whole brand that we've built at Uncomfortably Dark, which is about indie support. It's daily reviews for the indie horror world at large, and it's interviews, and it's, you know, it's a whole lot of work, and it's not just about us, and it's not just about my authors. But if I'm skipping those days and I'm not giving that indie support, then I don't stand by my brand then, right? So I have to be consistent about my brand before I'm consistent about my own stuff, because that is what I have grown, and that is what is more important right now than just my own stuff. So
and I'll interject there that Candace Nola is easily the greatest cheerleader that anybody in the indie horror community has. Hands down, I will fight you for that, over that. So just,
I wouldn't say greatest, but I try a lot. I
Careful, he's gonna fight you.
try to share and post and kind of be aware of what's out there. But yeah, it's just, I think there are so many incredible voices out here that need to be heard and that deserve to be seen. It's not just about the top 15 most well-known names. It's about, what about that new guy that came out of the woodwork 6 months ago? Have you read this book? Because it's like, sometimes you have to know what's new. You have to know what's out there, because if you don't, you might miss the greatest book that you've ever read. You know, it may not be the greatest book that 1,000 other people have ever read, but to you, the new guy back here that just dropped his novel may have just given you the greatest thing that you've ever read. But if no one is noticing it, you'll never know. So I just try to, pay attention to what's happening and get
And
names out there.
it's so important too, because I think everyone on this show has said for years that the disconnect between like traditionally published stuff and indie stuff, like it's not as big a chasm as the average reader thinks it is. And I really think that it's the smallest or most non-existent it's ever been. It is just not that hard to find a small press or self-published book that is as good or better than some of the stuff you pick up in Barnes and Noble.
There's amazing books happening in the indie world right now. Absolutely phenomenal, incredible voices that are out now. And if you're only walking around Barnes and Noble, or you're only buying from the top 4 or 5 big publishers, you are missing thousands of phenomenal stories. It's just, you're doing yourself an injustice if you're not looking at everything that is available both within the traditional world as well as the indie world, because some of these authors are among the best authors of all time, and I will stake my entire reputation on that. Many of these folks that I personally know, that I have read, that I have lifted up, any of them can stand against Stephen King, Dean Koontz, and Straub, and all of them. Like, they are just as good and every bit just as original, and their prose is magnificent. And you're missing an entire world if you're not reading any indie at all. Like, it's a whole other league out here.
And it's almost all I read now. But yeah, as a living example of that, up until about 2014, all I read was mainstream shit. It was a family thing. I grew up reading my family, and it was always that way. And I never did anything. And then I met John Taff and Tony Rivera of then Gray Matter Press. And Tony sent me one of their books, one of his anthologies, the very first one. And I read that, and it was a whole big holy fuck revelation moment for me, because I always, before, if it was someone said indie or self-published, I went, shit, that's shit. Give me a real book, and that is so wrong. I agree with you. It's so, the best fiction, sure, I still read some, big 5, big 6 publishers, because I have to, because I'm a huge Stephen King fan, and people like that. But the vast majority that I go looking for is indie fiction, because you never know what you're gonna get. It goes way beyond the life is like a box of chocolates. Indie fiction is like a box of chaos, and it's glorious. Because
I grew up on Stephen King. I actually have, like, over here against this wall, I have every single book he's ever written in hardcover, paperback, you name it. I have 2 massive. I write because of him. Like, he is my biggest inspiration. He's the reason why I write. But when I was in my younger adult years, 24, 25, 26, I started to get tired of the repetition in a lot of the big 5 mainstream books. Everything was a cookie cutter recipe. You knew what was going to happen in almost every book you picked up, and then they turned to marketing everything as thriller, and they all follow the same recipe. And I get that the big 5 are like, oh well, this is what the market wants, and this is what the demographic wants. But I got tired of being able to predict the outcome. I got tired of reading the same recipe. You know what I mean? And then when I came into the indie world and I started reading all these people, what blew me away was the originality and the creativeness of absolutely every single story that I read. No recipes here, no cookie cutter, boom, 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 you know what's going to happen. these books are taking it to a whole new level with the creativity and the originality, and you just, by the end of the book, you have no idea where the hell you just went, but you know you enjoyed it. You It's a whole new world, and you're going to find something more to love about it, and you're going to find something that takes you far beyond what mainstream is offering right now.
On so many levels too. I mean, sure, the originality is a big one, because I think most of us who write indie fiction do it because we're people who want to make our art the way we want to make our fucking art, not the way people want it to be so they can sell it, you know. But then there's also even on the level of like covers, big 5, big 6 covers, they can be glorious, but they tend to be so fucking cookie cutter and thematic. And I mean, you'll never see a big 5 cover with a cover like nubs on it, you know, and that's just criminal in my opinion.
No, but it's fun though. It's fun. Like, go into any Barnes and Noble that has a really good indie horror book display, right? So go in there and look at that shelf over here, and then just turn to your left and look at their mainstream display, and you see the difference, like night and day. You're gonna see those. Yeah, they have the thriller-esque covers, and they're shiny and they're pretty, but they all look the same, right? It's the same big block font. It's the same, striking colors in the background. But you look at that indie
person and silhouette,
and it's glorious. You've got vibrancy, and you've got shit just falling out of people's faces and open wounds, and you have things that you don't even see in a horror movie on some of these covers. And then you have some of these covers that are the most beautiful things you've ever seen, even though they're maybe displaying some of the most grotesque artwork you've ever seen, but they're beautiful within that. And it's just like, you don't see that on these mainstream books. It's art compared to, here's a movie poster, but this is art. It's a difference.
Like indie, I see not a lot, but frequently now, a lot of actual hand created covers, by human artists. Obviously, human artist is important. But like Eric LaRocca's, I can't remember the name of it now. It's Doug Morano published it, Bad Hand Books, a collection, and Caitlin Hackett did the watercolor painting for the cover, and it's just fucking gorgeous, and the cover is a work of art in and of itself, you rarely are going to find that in big 5 fiction. So thanks to everybody. I love people who are willing to trash big 5 fiction with me. That's not really what that was about, though. What that conversation was about.
It's just, expand. Broaden your horizons. If you're a reader, don't limit yourself to just what New York wants you to read. There's thousands of us out here doing some amazing work. Try it.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie. If Simon and Schuster comes to me and offers me a stupid fucking contract, I'm gonna take it. In
a heartbeat.
But I'm saying you a nice soulless cover.
Just broaden what's out there. You might be pleasantly surprised.
Just for our listeners, for the book Shane was talking about, it was They Were Here Before Us, and this is what the cover looks like.
Yeah,
because I actually had that one. But I just want to say, Candace, because I know how it is. Like when I like stories I've written, sometimes it's hard to hear people kind of rave about them. But in terms of like the social media presence, like with Uncomfortably Dark and your own work, I think you're doing it the right way. Like you mentioned a street team. And Brennan will know this because we both kind of listen to the same types of music, like the early 2000s, like some of those punk bands and alternative bands. Like the street team was like the best form of marketing you could have because it was like word of mouth, and those people already kind of liked what you did, so like they wanted to help you, plus you give them like cool perks like the street team. Like with bands it was always like, oh, we'll give you stickers to throw up around and a couple other things.
Yeah.
But that, like, it was more of an investment. So I think you're going about it the right way with like the street team thing. And I think like more authors, and I'm no expert, trust me, but more authors, like if they kind of took that like street team mentality and like applied that, it would make their promotion a lot better. And it's not something you necessarily have to like do that much because those people are already your fans, and they're willing to spread that. But I think, just to kind of sum it up, I think you do a great job with like the street team thing and like indie horror in general. Like I feel like there's more of that, and Gabino does this, Iglesias, with like his promo Fridays.
Yeah.
I feel like there's much more of like a kind of hustle mentality of like, most of the people in the indie community, they take more of a proactive approach to promotion.
Uncomfortably Dark does that as well. So yeah, kudos to all you people who do that. I always feel guilty for my lack of support anymore, because I get so fucking busy with other projects because I'm stupid and I take on 12 at a time, but and I totally have no idea where I was going with that, so fuck me.
Well, just kind of like you were saying, Shane, I feel that too sometimes. But like even stuff like this, I feel like, and people who mention reviews, they say, it only has to be a short thing. I get in my head about this a lot as a reviewer, like writing my reviews for the site. I always feel like, and that's part of what makes it hard to write them, is I almost feel like they have to be kind of these like magazine style exposés. But in all reality, as long like most of the reviews I've read, they're the shorter ones where it's like, hey, I like this book and it's because of this. And it might be just a short little thing that connects with me. But for some reason, and I feel like I'm not going to speak for everyone, but it kind of seems like that's kind of the trend with like reviews, is it's almost like you feel like you have to kind of write like an article to make it seem like a valid opinion about why you like the book versus just, hey, I like this and a couple quick things.
Yeah.
I prefer to write my reviews that way, like an article. It's what I've always done, and I can't.
Same here. That's why I mentioned it.
Yeah, I've been criticized by other reviewers for doing it that way. You're way too verbose. Nobody wants an analysis of it. But at the same time, the fact of the matter is I've always called myself a critic. And if I'm going to call myself a critic, then I'm going to talk about the damn story and say something, other than, oh, I really loved it or I hated it, and walk on, But that's just stylistic. It's every review is a valid review, and every review is a good one, but yeah.
Well, I know. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Candace.
I tried writing the longer ones, and I did that for a long time because I had the same approach. Like, in order for me to be a valid reviewer, I need to make it sound like this, and I need to give the synopsis, and I need to tell you about the characters. You know what? I'm exhausted. I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. There's not enough hours in my day anymore. And it's all I can do now to keep up with the blurbs and my own review team and everything else. I will still review, but it's maybe 4 to 7 sentences long. And it's strictly this was fucking awesome, and let me tell you why. Or
Mhm.
this checked all my boxes, and this is why, and I thought this was great, and this part fell a little bit flat, but hey, it was a good, solid read. If you like trope A, B, and C,
Mhm.
go buy it, you know. But I will say, as a personal preference, it bothers the fuck out of me when someone writes a one-page essay on one of my books. I need to read the story now. Now, none of my readers need to go read the story because you just gave it all away. I don't want
No.
every book that I write being posted on Goodreads. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Or you somewhere in the middle? Tell me what you liked. Tell me what you didn't. Tell me what fell flat. Move on. I don't want a reviewer giving away my entire novel that I've spent months on, or hours on, or even minutes on, depending on what you're reviewing. Don't give it all away, because why do I need to read the story now?
Yeah, I'm
I'm
a major stickler about that. I think I probably used to annoy the fuck out of Rich when we were still writing together on Ink Heist, because like, no, I think that spoils it too much, dude. You got to change that part. It's like, yeah, there's it's one thing to critique or review a book, and another thing to just spoil the fuck out of it.
That's the thing. There's like a lot of folks that don't realize they're spoiling the book or the entire premise of the story. You don't give away the twist. You don't give away the magic. It's
Some people don't even recognize that they're doing that, though.
Yeah.
It's like my little sister is horrible about that. It's like so bad that it's like she'll start to tell you something about, because I hate even a tiny spoiler for a movie or something like that. And she'll start to tell me something about, no, I haven't seen that yet. Don't tell me. Oh, I'm not going to spoil it.
But
spoil, it's like, oh, damn, just collapsed, with the spoilers. And she just doesn't even realize she's doing it.
So.
Now, I'm curious how you guys feel, because I've seen readers who get annoyed when they see a review that maybe it doesn't tell you what the twist is, but it tells you that there is a twist. How do you feel about that?
I hate the term twist with a passion. So it's not something I personally use myself, but yeah, I don't know. A lot of people, yeah, I don't have any feelings. You can tell me there's a twist. I refuse to even know what that means.
Just like the book, it's literally the plot of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, it's kind of the same thing as Shane. Like, when we were talking about like those kind of verbose reviews, like to Shane's point, it never annoyed me, but him and I both, when we wrote together on Ink Heist and even on podcasts, we would mention like either potential spoiler, and it could be the most mundane thing, and I'm sure maybe some of our listeners were like, all right, that's like the fifth time you said potential spoiler, and then it's like something inconsequential.
Yeah,
but I feel like him and I both like erred on the side of caution to be like, hey, we'll say potential spoilers even if it's the most like mundane thing possible. But like for me too, like I would never explicitly maybe say, and this is so weird, and this comes from kind of like reviewing music, like more abstract things. Like I might, without saying there's a twist, I might drop a couple keywords or like kind of beat around the bush of like, oh, there's some really interesting things that the author does with the narrative. Basically, like if you read between the lines, there's a twist, but without telling you there's a twist.
Yeah.
I got such a kick out of I understand it. Like I get that it's gonna like weigh on your mind, and you're going to be like almost anticipating the destination as opposed to enjoying the journey. But I had seen one person that kind of posted about it, and they said that it was annoying because they were like looking for things that could be the twist, but like in the way they phrased that, I was like, so you're paying attention to what you're reading, because that's what that sounds like to me. Like that's, I don't know that I mark that as a bad thing. I will say I do like the low to no spoiler review, and I, even to a degree, like I kind of stopped reading the synopsis on backs of books because I feel like a lot of them go too far. I was reading one recently, and it was, it alludes to like, uh, dealing with, the death of her husband or whatever, and the husband doesn't die for like the first 100 pages. So it's like, why are you telling me this? It's that totally it changes the trajectory. I love that, like kind of like just bare bones. What was I reading recently? Oh, the I read The Secret History by Donna Tartt, and I'd heard really good things about it, but I didn't really know what it was about. And I looked at the synopsis, and it's like it's just nothing. It's like a paragraph that says nothing. And I'm like, okay, I'm in. Like, I have no idea what's going to happen, and you didn't even try to help me out there, and I appreciate you for that.
Yeah. I read a lot of stuff blind now. I don't even look at the back. I just go right in and just read it, because there are a lot of folks who just give too much away, and then sometimes it takes me out of the mood of even wanting to read the book, because now it's like, well, I feel like I know everything that's going to happen, and it's not really exciting me right now. So let me pick something else up that's going to kind of pull me into the mystery of it, which is what I'm looking for. And so now I don't even flip over the book. I read it straight in, and hopefully I get hooked.
Well, there's an art to writing back cover copy, and it's and I'm not going to pretend I hate it. I am absolutely in that author subset that's like, this is the worst fucking part of marketing.
I agree.
But it's, again, there's a fine line there. It's supposed to be a tease and a hook, whereas so many people, and it doesn't matter whether they are self-pubbing their first book or whether they have their 15th out, on the front, display at Target. There are so many that you read it and you're like, okay, that you just synopsized like the first 70% of the book. That's not even a hook. It's not even a tease. It's just, you're just telling me what happens in the first 200 pages.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I will write mine, and then I have a friend I send mine over to, and then he rips it apart and he sends me back like 4 sentences. He's like, here you go.
Yep. Everybody needs that friend. Yep.
Hate it. I'm like, all right, good.
Yeah, I can't even begin to count how many times Rich and I have pissed each other off with, how does this look? No, this part sucks. Not really. We've always been very, very open. We're very, very amicable editors for each other. So, and like Brendan said, everybody needs those people.
Yeah.
I've never published a single word that wasn't read and edited by somebody I thought was better than me first.
Yeah. No, I think that's very fair.
Oh, Brennan. Seeing as how I edited a lot of your stuff now.
I didn't miss that.
Aw. I'm humble.
So
I was just gonna. Oh, go ahead, Shane.
No, do it.
I was just gonna say, like, it's interesting when you guys were kind of talking about like back cover copy and things like that, and how hard it is. Like, that's the biggest thing for me, is you want to like kind of tell people what the story's about, but without giving it away. But like, more so than books, like it was interesting hearing you guys talk about certain books that you've read. For me, it's movies, like trailers. Although I feel like now they're starting to get a little bit better, but I remember there was a while, like maybe like the early 2010s kind of, and then like the middle parts, where they would do that, like all of the coolest parts of the movie were in the trailer, and then you're watching the movie and you're like, wait, I already saw this. I already saw this. And I feel like they're
Yeah.
going more back. Luckily, I haven't seen that with books, but it seems like you guys may have. But I have found the same thing. I'm a verbose type of writer where I like to over explain. I and mainly I write short stories now. So like it's still kind of long, but I don't have to worry about back copy. I can't even imagine trying to distill like a 50,000 word manuscript into like 200 words.
6 sentences. There you go. Yeah, it sucks. She's like, I wrote this whole novel, and now I don't know what to say about it.
Yeah.
See, that's you know what's funny with me is that I'm a first draft. I'm an editor. I write the draft, and it's agonizing to me. And then I love to edit. I absolutely love to go through and you know, I think that's because I was first and foremost a poet. You know, so I love to see what I can chop and make things more concise and more, you know, I don't know, perfect, I guess.
Yeah.
What else you got out now, Candace? You've got some other stuff out.
Notes just came out. I have a couple collections out. I have Clown Shoes that just came out in paperback and Kindle. I have Ivy League. Look at that cover. See how pretty that is. See, you're not going to see that in Barnes and Noble anywhere.
No.
I have this one came out late fall. It's about a demon story, a lot of folklore in this one. This one was a lot of fun. I got those out. I have my latest collection out. Demons in My Bloodstream came out from Head Sky in August, but the audio just came out yesterday. So those are also out. And then I'm working on Hank Flynn 2 and part 3 to the Bishop story right now, which we actually have to push back the release. It was supposed to be later this month, but my co-author needed some time. So it will most likely be out the end of next month, which is fine because I didn't want to rush it. So
I'm gonna drop a review of Bishop somewhere soon. That is definitely way up on the top of my list of favorite Candace Nola reads. So I need to get to the others.
yeah, thank you.
It's like a Hydra, though. By the time you read the next one, she's got 2 more out.
I know. When Rich and I talked to you guys last, we both went, yeah, I'm gonna catch up on her, and then we both went and looked at her, you know, body of work and went, yeah, I'll get as far as I can before I die.
You'll be fine as long as you don't read anyone else.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, but honestly, and this, you know, I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but it's true. When it comes to, you know, deserted island authors, you know, if you can only take one author's books with you, you'll have a lot of fucking books if you take Candace Nola's with you, and they'll all be a blast.
Well, that's
Ringing
true.
endorsement.
What about you, Brennan? Other than, you know, the news,
Yep.
what's going on?
I had a story collection come out in December that takes place entirely in the old western world of Buzzard's Edge. Has 9 stories, including one that's kind of a wraparound, interrupts every other story and kind of tells a big overarching kind of like thread. And it also includes a novella with characters, with the two main characters, Rory and Alice from Noose, and from the second book in that series, The Demon of Devil's Cavern. I am almost done writing the first draft of the next book in that series, which is called Song Dogs, and it will be out in December, and that goes back to following those two characters again. I am also working on later this year a book. If you are familiar with Mark Tullius, runs a series called Try Not to Die, which is a little bit like the old Choose Your Own Adventure books, but with a little more gore to them. I will be writing one of those, and it takes place in the Slattery Falls universe. And then, as we mentioned, I have The Denizens coming out next year. And I realized now that I, talked about all the people who didn't want that book instead of pitching what the fucking book actually is. So let me do that real quick. Best way to set it up is probably Salem's Lot with Dawn of the Dead and a little bit of Rachel Harrison's cackle in there. It is a small town horror book with a little southern town surrounded by a living cemetery.
Okay, yeah. I'm gonna need to be a member of your street team for that one.
I will start a street team, or you can start a street team for me if you like. That would save me some work.
Okay.
Yep.
Rich,
Yeah,
you're my lieutenant.
I like how it kind of ping pongs throughout.
Exciting stuff on all parts. I wish I had more time, but I don't have more time. This is always a thing with us. It's like we need to start scheduling part 1s and part 2s for our conversations with each other, or just get together once a month and do this.
I'm down. I'm down. I can stay up till 9 once a month.
Yeah.
I can't exist on 27 minutes of sleep.
Well, she's taking on another project, so it'll be 21 points.
She actually wrote 2 books while we were talking.
Yeah.
She's typing one-handed.
Yep.
She writes them in her head. She already told us that. So.
Yeah.
She smiles and nods and writes her book.
I wouldn't recommend it.
A
a lot happening up here.
It is always lovely to talk to you guys. If you have anything else that is desperately needing to be shared, do share now. And same with you, Rich.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Okay, so nobody has anything. Bye.
Well, I'll just throw out really quickly that I appreciate that. Well, first of all, that people should check out Nubs, and I appreciate the biggest what if of all, because you said this story revolves around what ifs. The biggest what if of all is, of course, what if you are nomming a nub and its owner farts in your face? You may find the answer to this question in these pages.
Yeah.
And it might tie into something I said earlier too, but I won't tell you.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple, moments in the book.
Oh, man. It's glorious. As you both know, Rich and I love you both to death. You're welcome anytime. And yeah, we should do this often. Get together, talk about horror, ruin Eva's night for her, and encourage her husband to drink too much.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I love you guys, everybody. Brennan, LaFaro, Candace, Nola. Candace has, I'm remiss in not mentioning this earlier. Candace has a bunch of her books on Godless, if you're ebook person. I don't know if Brennan, all I know is Amazon. Sorry, bro.
I think there's some on Godless.
Okay.
I think there's a couple.
But yeah, pick something up, pick anything up, and read these guys. You will not be disappointed. I guarantee that. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Good night,
as always.
guys.
Always. Peace.
Bye.
Bye, guys.